Hello and welcome to the Great White North, your destination for the iciest cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the North. I'm your host, Charles Constantine, and with me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Hello.
How you doing today?
Just dandy. I had a really good week.
Oh yeah, well, what kinds of good things did you get up to?
Uh, I got all my work done. Met a nice lady.
Oh,
Hopefully that works out. But it kind of adds a little spice to life when you meet someone new.
damn, white pill. You're gonna make it.
We'll see. I don't know. She is kind of a shit lib.
Well, that doesn't matter. You'll be fine, honestly. They'll just pick up whatever you say. They'll pick it up.
Yeah,
Give it enough time.
I have a three-stage plan for this.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it's just 2 steps. First, I'm gonna inure her to my bullshit, so she's like, oh, it's just so NPNP. Like, oh, he's just like that. And then after she's used to that, then I'll just be like, hey, ever heard of this fascism stuff? It sounds pretty cool. Bam. Done.
Well, and then part 3, you tell her you have a podcast where you talk about those topics, and then
Right.
boom, you got the massive social clout. 80 people watched my show last week. Big deal.
Right. Well, I told her I was in a men's club that works
yeah.
with youth and on working out and philosophy and promoting good values, and it's kind of like a fraternity. That's what I told her.
Well, who would not fall in love with a guy like that? So I think you're gonna make it.
Well, yeah, okay. I'll smuggle a baby into her one way or the other.
All right. Godspeed, man. Godspeed.
So, what's been going on this week while I've been out gallivanting?
I mean, like on my end, nothing fun, nothing exciting. I mean, I had a cinnamon bun today. It was pretty good.
Yeah,
Really
I haven't
good,
heard of any
actually.
big goings-ons either. I don't know. Just one of those boring weeks.
Yeah, I don't. I don't really. I try to not to pay attention to all this stuff out there. I just, like I said, eat your cinnamon bun and maybe have a flavored water or something and enjoy your life as it is in front of you. Hey,
Wait, they got flavored water now? What
well,
kind of flavors
yeah.
they got?
Well, I don't know, like fruit stuff. They make
Never
them
heard
with
of.
fruits.
Huh. What a world we live in.
Okay,
I,
so
I've, there's been a lot of fuss in the chats. I haven't been reading them much either.
yeah. Yeah, this seems to be, I don't know, I would call it an issue at this point. I mean, I guess just the endless onslaught of propaganda surrounding the state of things. Like really, I think that's what we're seeing happening right now. I don't know what your thoughts are on it are, but I mean, like at this point, like what's the point in engaging it really? I don't know what you think, but
Yeah, I can maybe get a few lads together to lift some weights or something, but I'm not being invited to Putin's long table or anything, so I'm not sure my opinion really matters anyway. I'm
yeah, yeah.
They're not here in Canada. I'd probably have a real opinion if I was Ukrainian or Russian, I suppose, or a NATO, apparatchik or something. But I'm not. Life just goes on. Sun's still shining.
Yep. I mean, like it's not like it's completely irrelevant. I think some of the implication of this is we are going to see things. It's going to accelerate how expensive living is. I mean, I think these gas prices, from what I understand at least, are somewhat tied to the conflict, and they might continue to go up. And it might be wise to stock up on a little bit of extra gas. So there
Sure.
are things that are relevant coming out of this, but what people are mostly engaging in, from what I've seen at least, is just completely irrelevant. All kinds of wild theories about who's right and who's wrong in the conflict, and getting really invested in, whether or not one side or the other is based enough, as if that even matters. Like this is a geopolitical conflict with, implications for world powers. They're not worried about like who has more gays and on one side or the other, who's properly installing human rights. Like they have actual interests for their own powers. So all of this discourse is mostly just white noise. Like it mostly is completely irrelevant, and it is just it's no different than engaging in who your favorite hockey team is or something. So you're better off, I think what we're kind of pointing at is you're better off kind of disengaging from most of this, because most of it is irrelevant and undetermined on what the truth of the matter is in on any side.
I like an old piece of Jordan Peterson advice on this.
Oh yeah.
He says, don't read any news that's not like a monthly periodical, because if it doesn't even last a month, then it's not really news. I think like it's good to know what's going on in the world, but you can't. But reading the daily news or the propaganda or your Facebook feed or whatever, that's the opposite. That's making yourself dumber about what's going on, really.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that, because I mean, how many times so far, and what it's been now a week, 2 weeks or so, how many times in that period has information come out and then been corrected within 2 days? Or you see a picture posted saying it's one thing, turns out it's another thing, and then on a third day it's something else. So in attempting to keep up with the flow of information, which with modern mass media, it's a constant flow, it's endless, it's an unending flow. How are you ever, like, what's the point in maintaining your eyes on the screen constantly when it's just going to change in a few days? No, like, I'm not an expert on this historically, but what war, what major event has had an accurate historical account written of it? I mean, just in general, but let alone like the days that it's occurring and then widespread, like then made widespread. Like I doubt that you're going to get that kind of information right now as it happens. You're not going to get even a decent story of it until much later, and even that is going to be overshadowed by propaganda.
But okay, here's a count. Maybe it's our job as the radical, playing a bit of devil's advocate here. Maybe it's our job as the radical right to do counter propaganda, to stay on top of it so we can counteract their memes, etc. Or is that just us playing our role in the grand spectacle, keeping the vibe on war, keeping the zeitgeist in a chaotic state?
So what I would say to your devil's advocate thing there is, to what end? To like, for counter propaganda, to what end is that going to serve? What impact is that going to have? I guess that would be my first question, just so we can elucidate this a little bit.
Well, I suppose we'd be waking people up or something, or we'd be working against the propaganda of our enemies by counter signaling it.
Okay. So then on that, how do we know that we ourselves can get a more accurate interpretation? I'm not saying this is not like a defeatist stance where like, okay, we'll never ever get accurate, so let's not do anything. But if we're doing it for the purpose of getting people to wake up or to red pill them or something, shouldn't the point be to give them the accurate information? But where do we get that accurate information from? Because right now I'm not really seeing very many clear understandings of this global conflict right now.
Well, yeah, I guess the answer to that would be to wait and watch and research carefully and really put your mind to it and not just react instantly.
Yeah, so that's a fair point. Like if you're going to be doing that, if you're going to invest enough time to make sure you get a clear understanding of what's going on, and not just be reactionary to it, because I think a lot of people are going to a pro-Russian side or pro-Ukraine side simply because of a reactionary tendency. Like, oh, I hate the Russians for X, Y, and Z, so now here's a Ukraine flag in my bio. Oh, I have quarter Ukrainian ancestry and I live in Alberta, so I hate Russians now.
Or we hate the global American empire and NATO. And rightfully so. But so we want to be against them. Yeah.
So if you're taking that route, that reactionary route, well, then it's pretty much useless. But if you're at least going, again, like this means though, this is not just as simple as quickly making up some memes and tossing them out there. It means you're actually putting in some research. You're going to look to find the facts and find the information. You're going to have to take your time doing that. That's going to come out much later than the story, and the news cycle may have already passed where you're at. So if you're going to take that approach, I think that's more noble. Um,
But you
but
are
I'm not
still
sure.
putting eyes on the great spectacle that they're
Yeah,
lining up for us.
you're still doing that. So again, as long if it's good information, then I wouldn't necessarily critique it as much as what I see, at the moment, where it's just speculation coming out. I'll see all the time, in these Telegram chats, someone posts something like some source claiming something, and then I'll say right after, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I saw. And so there's a lot of hysterical claims and exciting claims even, but people are willing to admit that they don't necessarily know whether or not this is a true report, but they just want to put it out there because it's potentially something exciting to happen. And that just goes to show that so many of us are getting caught up in a conflict for pure entertainment purposes. And like I'm not exempt from this. It is something like going on that is like, whoa, what is happening? But that's not I don't think this is the way that we want to engage uh, with this kind of conflict and with this kind of like reality. Like this isn't just some show. It isn't just some exciting like video game to feast your eyes upon. You're not watching a sport. Like this is people's lives are at stake here, and um like
And the well-being of our people depends on us learning the ability to be able to ignore the messaging of global homo.
yeah, I think that's a very very good point. Because if you can't ignore this, if you can't disengage from this, then how are you going to disengage from all of the other crap that comes up in our world, so that you can put your efforts to something real? Because again, you supporting Ukrainians, you supporting Russians across the world, like what are you actually doing for them? You're not, and like you have things to support in your local area. You don't like you aren't changing the world by sending money to some Ukrainian GoFundMe so they can fight back against Russia or vice versa. Like that's not changing the world. Um, people around you need you, and if you can't even disengage from the propaganda and the spectacle for long enough to focus on what matters around you, then what are you even going to accomplish? Like you're just stuck back in the same cycle. You might as well be watching porn again. You might as well be watching sports again.
I think that's a good place.
Sports again.
I think that's a good place to leave it for now.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to Cope Country Checkup, and we got Laser on the show today. A Saskatchewan boy like me.
Sounds like a good boy. Let's hear what he's got to say.
All right. See you on the other side. Welcome to another Cope Country Checkup. Today we got Laser. He's from Saskatchewan. I don't know if you want to tell us like what part of Saskatchewan, or if you'd rather keep it vague.
Northeast Saskatchewan is kind of the term, but of course I'm not north of Larange. I'm just kind of north of Saskatoon, northeast area. Good country.
I'll say, yeah, that's where my family's from. So I know it well. I go there all the time.
Yeah, we're about
pretty much neighbors. Yep. So tell us first, how did you get into the dissident right? And like, who's your favorite guys in here? Like, do you listen to any other podcasts or anything?
Well, I got into it online probably around 2013, 2014. Not really knowing that I was in it. I was kind of just, came out of after 2008 or whatever. I was pretty into conspiracy theories over the, financial crash, and going to university and reading anything I could about that whole era. And then kind of got into, just some more different kind of politics stuff when I was doing university. I was taking history and international relations. So got kind of into like, your old school geopolitical analysts, like the guy that's come up recently over the Ukraine thing, the John Mearsheimer. Read a bunch of him and got really into Nixon and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I was on Salo for him. I was never a poster. I was always just a lurker. And then moved on to Twitter. And Frick, I really don't know who my first guy was per se. Like, but I've followed Bronze Age perverts since like 2015 or something like that. And now I'm more kind of just the live, laugh, love, the be normal kind of, have your dissident politics, but be a normal guy kind of world.
That's my favorite school of the whole thing.
Yeah. So, I've always really enjoyed like the Perfume Nationalist. I don't know if you know much about them or whatever, but that was always really interesting podcast for that. But never really, I don't have too many other podcasts really that I listen to. Like, I like listening to like Red Scare and shit just because the girls are pretty funny and sometimes they're more radical than most guys in our sphere, ironically.
Yeah.
I remember like over the course of the 2016 election, I wound up listening to a lot of like Fascism and stuff. Those guys were actually kind of interesting. Had some cool, like, just real breakdown, real basic stuff about like, straight up electoral politics. That made me a little bit interested in just like the more brick and bone mortar shit of politics. And so then I got kind of involved in the sask party and stuff, not directly, but just working with local MLA and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. You it seems like your circle is actually almost diametrically opposed to the one I can do. Like, I've heard of Salo and all that, but I never looked into it much. And same with Fascination, Red Scare. I've heard of all these things, but I've never looked into them much. It's funny how these cliques like come together and merge, and how many different ways of being fashy there are out there.
Oh
yeah, I find that interesting because with like, I don't know, Perfume Nationalist or like even Red Scare and the Salo Forum, like all that stuff just seems neither here nor there. Like, I wouldn't know how anyone from that sphere would end up like where I'm at. It just doesn't. I don't know if that. To me, it just doesn't even seem like the same area. So that's interesting how they all merge together like that.
Yeah, well, I guess it's like with Perfume Nationalists, they're very culture oriented. Like it's more about just how the culture is degraded. There's always that a big thesis of it is talking about like the 2010s and just what the fuck the 2010s were, and it's just more like easy listening kind of shit like that, and they're pretty funny and they have some good guests on, and I kind of I do like Perfume, and I've always been a bit of a fag, so.
There's nothing wrong with smelling good.
That's right. Yeah, they used to call it metrosexual or whatever, but I've never really agreed with that. I just always had weird interests like theater and musical theater, art movies, that kind of stuff.
You're the only metrosexual from maybe the entire northeast of the province. You're a rare bird.
Yeah. Well, it makes you tough. You can't get away with this stuff easily.
No.
Yeah, like every time I've been to Saskatchewan, just greasy motherfuckers with mullets. You go play lacrosse there, and like even the floor you play on is just grease. Like it.
You don't like the Manitoba mud flap?
Oh man. Oh. But yeah, a perfume, like smelling good. That's the last thing that comes to mind when I'm in Saskatchewan.
I think wood smoke and diesel smells fine. I don't know.
Oh man, my favorite is sled exhaust.
Yeah.
Get the sled going, and that just 2-stroke engine ripping. That's the best smell ever.
Makes you nice and lightheaded too.
Oh yeah.
Did you do any sledding this winter? A lot of snow.
Oh yeah. We actually just got ourselves a nice one. My uncle, he's a sled mechanic. Spare time over the winter, and so we bought a nice. I guess it's 8 years old now, but it still looks like a new sled to me. It's been fun. Had the nephews out and ripped them behind the toboggan for quite a while, and
nice. You ever shoot a coyote off of it?
No, I never got to shoot a coyote. I've shot a coyote out of a tractor though.
See, this is our faggiest guy in the Northeast.
Yeah. I wrestle cattle, yeah.
Yeah, you're a
Rancher.
farmer, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm a rancher, man. Yeah, we have cattle. So
How many head?
about 150 head of cattle, like in our own herd.
Hmm.
And then we run a feedlot, operate a feedlot in the winter. So that's we got about 1,200 head of cattle in the all throughout the winter. So 500-pound steers that grew up in the summer come to our place and get fed all winter and head on out to 1,000 pounds. And
That's a lot of work.
yeah, it's a full life experience. It's a lifestyle, man.
Yeah, you guys don't get any vacations.
Not really. Sometimes, we'll find time. My dad, he's just a little over 60 here, so he'll be able to get away for a few days, and I'll take over, and vice versa. So it's not terrible.
Nice.
Sounds like something that you have to grow up into. Like, I think a lot of people in the sphere get this idea of just cutting ties with the city and jumping out to a farm or something and just figure it out on the fly. It doesn't. I don't think it's that simple though. Eh? Like it seems like the kind of thing like you said, it's a lifestyle. Like you have to grow into it. You can't just make a 180 flip and jump out there.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you're a person in the city who wants to get into being a farm life guy, you're gonna have to buy yourself a nice acreage that's got some water on it, got some space, and get into chickens, get into the small stuff. You can't, maybe you can get a dairy cow or something like that if you're able to work and spend the time 24/7 on the farm. You can do that, but and if you got a wife that can work in town, they say most successful ranchers all have a wife that works in town. So that's just the reality of it. And then it's also just, man, like just money. Like cattle ain't cheap, land ain't cheap, nothing's free. So you gotta work your way into it.
And if you work hard enough, you can afford some of them fancy perfumes. Have you ever seen Charles Bronson's Mansum? You ever hear that one? Yeah, old Yield was showing me that the other day. Probably one of the better advertisements I've ever seen. What's your review of that one?
I've never had it, but I know the advertisements. But yeah, that's the other thing about that world is that just the aesthetic side of it can be very cool and enticing.
I've always wanted a new aesthetic to emerge. We got kind of the vaporwave thing out of the last few years, but nothing like that truly maybe that one will stand out, but nothing. The 20s still has yet to define itself, and there's a lot of opportunity there, I think. Do you have any predictions of how the aesthetic will go?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of what is it called? Kind of like the the trash beach bum kind of aesthetic. It kind of seems like it comes out of a bit of a vaporwave, colorful collared shirts with the kind of mullety look. Like I see that in the city almost more than I do in the farm area nowadays. But back in the early 2010s, we used to all have the mullet with the looking, kind of skanky collared shirts. But now that's in the city. I don't know.
Yes, all major cultural aesthetics do come from Northeast Saskatchewan and gradually migrate towards the cities. This is known.
Serious. I'm telling you, man. No, I don't really just the way that movies that are big and stuff, it's all this, it's either like a sci-fi or it's like a big blockbuster that ever reaches any sort of cultural, mainstream where everybody kind of knows it. It's always going to be something that's otherworldly. And so it never really affects how people look or how people want to look or what they want to see in the world. So it's weird how all these cultural things that came out of the 2010s and 2020s, like with like Dune and stuff. Like it's not transferable. So I'm not sure where we're gonna find like inspiration for new aesthetics.
Well, yeah, and there's no distinction between any place or anything like that. So nothing new can really emerge. It's just one giant, homogenous blob.
Yeah. And I mean, the social spaces have been cut off for 2 years. We should keep that in mind too. Like, I don't know the last time I was out in some bar, even like none of that aspect of social gatherings has been a thing too. So I'm sure that plays a role in slowing down the progress of a new style to emerge as well, when you're just not seeing people in person.
Yeah. Well, like today was one of the first times I've been in like a full bar. Like the afternoon, had some brunch and had, like it just wound up being packed, and I had to kind of remember and remind myself like, oh shit, I haven't really done this very often. Like we in like an actual establishment, we had shop parties and stuff like that. We were doing bush parties and stuff during COVID. Nobody really cared. We were still getting together, and I don't know, the lovely RCMP in my region. They did not do anything to slow down house parties or anything like that. So anybody could get together if they really wanted to. So, but everybody out here, man, we just wear whatever's in the clothing shack, man. Like I don't think anybody thinks about it too hard. You got your dirt bike hats, and
it's whatever's on sale at Mark's Work Warehouse.
You got whatever's on sale at Mark's, yeah.
Yeah, that's about half my wardrobe.
Yeah, with your everybody's got their own unique stain, and yeah,
I like cigarette burns. I think they're a nice addition to a t-shirt or a plaid jacket.
Yep, absolutely. A good one right on the chest to let a little hair out.
Nice. Yeah, that's classy.
Oh, the best.
If I remember correctly, one of the big predictions for where the style is going is all going to go to athleisure wear.
That's Matt Parrott's prediction.
That's Matt Parrott's. Yeah, I think the opposing end is like suits and ties and nice collared shirts coming from like Tyler Hamilton. So maybe that'll be like some convergence of athleisure and nice suits. That might be something new.
Formal wear.
There you go. Just invented the new style.
Well, that was the 2010s, right? Like I think we already went through the heaviest hit of athleisure. Like I think that's going to cycle down a little bit, but I think mostly it's going to like BMI predicts what you can wear and get away with so much. And there's going to be like casts of different people of like that will definitely like if you can keep a healthy weight and look like a normal person, like then you got your you can dress however you like. But if you're big, like it's all these clothing to hide that you're big.
I think I'm gonna start dressing like Sam Hyde in that one sketch where he's the pickup artist.
Oh yeah. Just full peacock.
Yeah. Big top hat.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm bringing back Wranglers. I don't know if anybody's with me on that, but I'm gonna be dressing in more Wranglers. I got nice Wranglers for the city that are nice and clean. I got beat up Wranglers for the late nights, and yeah, that's what I'm gonna be sticking with lately.
I can get behind that trend.
Sounds like a solid plan.
And button up shirts with the long sleeve. Roll up, and they're going to be 3 buttons down, so I got a nice open chest.
Oh, I better work on my bench press if we're doing that.
That's what I'm going for.
What's the fashions like in Edmonton these days?
Man, damned if I know. I have not taken a look at all. It's messy athleisure and tights and snow jackets. Like that's all you really see still. So nothing fancy, nothing special.
Are the girls still in leopard print? Please tell me they are.
I haven't seen a leopard print in years.
Oh, you're younger than me. I'm hitting different bars than you.
Yeah, I can imagine which one. So,
Well, there's that bar in Edmonton. I've went to a couple times. I don't know if it's still open, but it was that arcade bar.
oh yeah,
Yes, yeah,
It's
on
actually
White.
pretty solid.
beercade, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. Like, I mean, yeah,
All the college girls
but
go there. It's pretty all right for that.
I'll take it.
No, I thought NP was talking about on the rocks there, going on the rocks for those cougars.
I've been there
Oh.
many a time. Actually, I used to live right by there. Actually, yeah, never mind. That's another story for another day. Anyway, let's move
Oh,
on. Let's move on swiftly. Yeah, so you said before that you like the just be normal branch of what do you even consider what do you consider yourself, a fascist or nationalist or
Well, like, I guess that's where like the be normal kind of comes in. Like, you know, explaining the tenets of national socialism to someone is usually a difficult process. And it's more like, well, what is ideology? Is ideology good for you, bad for you? Like, you should have your values and have an idea what you want to see your government do. But like, creating your image or even your identity, or like your goal in life to be an ideological pursuit, I don't know if that's the best way to go about things in a certain sense. Like, and I mean that as like a upfront, like, like, say you're a group of guys and you go to do an event and you want to, promote your ideology. Well, I don't know if that's really like the way to get the people behind you, or even, spark the attention of a nation. It's more like, you got a group of guys and you want to make a statement. Well, get down to exactly what you want done. Like, be very straightforward. If you're going to do that kind of thing, say exactly what you want. Keep it simple, right? Like, one issue at a time kind of thing. Because when you get to ideology, it's so easy for people to misperceive you, or have, others try and project onto what you are. And I think that's kind of goofy, like, because it just leaves you open.
you're
So
saying?
yeah, I'm a nationalist for sure. Like, I'm a super nationalist. I'm a fascist, sure. I'm a super fascist if you like it, but but what does that really mean? Like, and so it's more like, be normal, be healthy, be good, work with your family, work with your friends.
But
And
then be informed. Be
be
informed by the
informed.
ideology. Don't make it
Yeah.
like you're a punk and you pick that as a image off a shelf or something like that. It's
Yeah, exactly. And like, it kind of take it from, what those truckers did. Like, there's groups in there that were pretty like ideologically motivated, of course, and they really wanted to pinpoint, the guy that's the whatever that nobody ever heard of, that, said something online once. But what they were successful at was just being like very straightforward and saying, end the mandates, end this, end that, and that's all we're here for. And, like, and then they just draped it all in the Canadian flag, and have a good day. And everybody kind of a lot of people got behind it for long enough. Pretty valuable. So I think it's just, like, just specific, and like, talk to the people that you're actually trying to win over, like, because they don't understand like the difference between a controlled economy and or like, what the tax rate should be, or like,
yeah.
Yeah, you got to meet people where they're at on all of that, and like, most people don't live through abstractions of ideology. Like, they just live in the real world as it is. So in that regard, yeah, you just be a normal person that's good for your community. And if your ideology, if you think it's good, if it's healthy, if it's moral, then it should just inform your actions so that you're a good, healthy, moral person. And then that should flow into what people see you as on your day-to-day interactions. And then boom, now like what's wrong at the end of the day? What can people say to you that makes you out to be some villain when you're just being a good moral person, regardless of what you believe on the back end, right? Like, just be normal. Just be normal and be racist. It's easy, simple.
It's so simple.
I think we solved it. We don't even really need the rest of this podcast or to continue because that is literally everything I'd ever try and get across. Well, be normal, be racist, don't be an ideologue fashion mannequin.
Yeah. And like, you know, some people might take that as like, oh, you know, don't care about you're not supposed to care about politics, or you're supposed to like believe in anything, or no, it's not that. It's more like, are you trying to benefit your people, or are you trying to benefit your ideology, right? Like, and you should always be just trying to benefit your people. Like,
yes.
And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And also, like, it's tough in Canada, man. Like, in the prairies, there's like a different economic structure is better for the prairies than, say, in Ontario or Quebec or the Maritimes. And so, like, I'm a big fan of regionalism. Like, I think that I honestly think that we should be allowed to create separate trading blocks within Canada so that, you know, Western Canada can run on a more free market economy, whereas, you know, Ontario could maybe have more protectionism for their manufacturing, things like that. Like, it's impossible to bridge those divides because anybody in Saskatchewan kind of understands, like, we had like a pretty socialistic government that ran our economy for 40, 50 years. And like, there's some good that happened, but there is a lot of problems that came out of it. And we've had a lot more prosperity and a lot better, you know, just overall, you know, you can say growth, but it's more like but
you can see it in the spirit of the people. We have a vitality that they lack in Manitoba, where they've maintained their socialist policies.
Yeah. And like, of course, it benefits the fact that our party called the Sask Party. I love that. That is just, that's perfect branding. So, and they're just be normal.
Yeah. Well, I think corporatism would solve the regional problem as well as the various class problems and all that. But I'm sure we'll get to talk about that at length.
It could.
I think so, yeah.
For now, I'm going to say goodbye to you, Laser. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, good to have you on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Well, love your family. Give a kiss to him for me.
All right. Well, I won't for you, but I'll do it nonetheless. All right, take care.
See you, brother.
It's always nice talking to someone close to your region. You can get along so easily.
Yeah, it seems like a quality dude. Just exact kind of guy I'd imagine out of northern Saskatchewan. Just fits the bill.
A cow wrangling metrosexual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I guess we'll take it. So you had an article here you wanted us to take a look at.
Well, it's this
or a video clip.
It's this clip from I think it's Lauren Bobber. Are we gonna play it?
Yes, it's on the screen now.
Okay.
So I pray for Ukraine, and I wish them the best. They have a great president right now who's really said clearly, live free or die. He said, I don't need a ride. Give me ammunition. The fight is right here. But we also have neighbors to the north who need freedom and need to be liberated, and we need that right here at home as well.
And neighbors to our south.
Yeah, incredible stuff from this very intelligent lady. So basically what she's getting at there is, okay, Ukraine's in this crisis of democracy and freedom and blah, 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 whatever, you know, American empire, you know, garbage. We need to save them. But let's not forget, you know, Canada, they're up north, our neighbors up north. They have a crisis of freedom and democracy. And, you know, it's our duty to save them from their tyrannical government. And I think this is somewhat in reference to the recent COVID stuff and the trucker protests and whatnot. And obviously, right off the bat, okay, we're already part of the American empire. We're in the sphere of influence of America already. So the idea that like, oh, as it stands now, and then this Lauren, whatever her name is, character, you know, saying, okay, Americans is beacon of freedom that needs to save Canada. Obviously, that's completely false. And this whole concept of like Canada is somehow extremely distinct in, you know, from America in that sense, and that the American system, as it stands now, can just annex Canada and save it from, I don't know, Trudeau or whatever issue we have currently. That's complete garbage. Just a goofy misreading of the entire world, or maybe it's intentional. I don't know. She seems kind of dumb. So that's what I see from that on first glance. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I'm pretty sure America's the source of, or like one of the main sources of the liberalism that got us into this mess. So I'm not sure that they would be able to save us. Maybe it would be easier to imagine if, say, someone from Iran was saying that they should annex us. Then it'd be like, yeah, well, at least they'd be bringing us into a new system. I'd still not want it. However, at least it would be like, at least it would be an actual change.
Yeah.
The other funny thing is we got guys in Alberta, and particularly Alberta, but also Saskatchewan and stuff, who believe the opposite and want to secede and go join America. I find them both equally preposterous.
Yeah, there's so I guess on the one point there, like, yeah, our the liberalism that we've developed here is ultimately just just American ideology at this point, because the same freedom that she says, you know, American can come bring to us is the same freedom that we already kind of have embraced, like the notion of negative freedom. Like, it's not like the only difference is like we have the Charter of Rights and they have the Constitution, really. And so like from that, you know, boomer con perspective, okay, we're not guaranteed the First or Second Amendments, and that, you know, that's seen as the pillars from which American freedom kind of stands on, that Canada lacks. So it's always put forth in this frame of Canada just needs that and it will be okay. And that's the same belief that some of these Alberta secessionists have as well. Like, if we only just had the First Amendment, and if we only just had the Second Amendment, then everything would be fine. And you know, in the American boomer con argument is that we need to further reinforce these amendments and then we'll be fine. But that's obviously not the case. And clearly the people that rule the institutions of this empire aren't interested in upholding those values, because they constantly work to undermine them, and they just bypass it. Like yeah, America does have free speech in some senses, but we still see dissidents blocked out of all spheres of relevance. And here it's a little bit more dangerous. The laws you can get in trouble more easily here, but fundamentally, you're getting in trouble or you're getting deplatformed either way. So, from that conventional understanding of Americanized interpretations of freedom, they're not offering us anything different. And the Albertans, the secessionists that kind of strive to think they'll get a better deal out of somehow joining America, they're obviously completely flawed, because they've just embraced that boomercon liberal ideology that is given to them from Americans as it stands now. And not like obviously all of that is just complete garbage. Like, no sense in no basis in reality.
It's also not as popular as people out east think it is out here. I'll say that. I went to a nationalist rally 2016, 17, and there was not one but two secessionist parties out there, and they were both asking literally everyone at the thing to be candidates because they couldn't get enough candidates to even hold Alberta, right? It's like it's 10 or 12 people and maybe a couple oil lobbyists of various sorts.
Yeah, it's not popular. The other issue though on this that I've seen is, like, even dissidents in America that kind of have this understanding, like they're where we're at, they'll push this idea too, like, oh well, like just bring Canada in to America. Obviously they come from the perspective that this would be done once dissidents in America gain control or something, or once America becomes based, then it will be on the Americans to save Canada and just annex the whole thing and then make the whole place based again.
Yeah.
And I think this is also a flawed perspective because it doesn't
annex
really
yourselves first. That's what I said. That's what I replied on that tweet, was annex yourselves first.
There you go. Because I mean, one, that's just an unrealistic interpretation of how you're going to go about doing this. Canada's so cucked. Americans are way better off. I mean, is that really the case? Maybe we're further along the liberal project than America is.
Are we though?
But not really. Like in certain areas, it seems to manifest that way.
Depends state by state, I guess. Really,
that's true. Like, and the overarching legal system in Canada allows certain things that the overarching legal system in America doesn't allow. But they still have drag queen story hour, right?
Right.
They
got Waco.
Yeah, they got exactly. So the idea that that the solution is just recapture America and save Canada from their garbage. That's not really compelling to me, because even if that was possible, would I really want to be a part of America? Like, in the ideal situation, and I'll ask this to you as well, but in the ideal situation, all the base guys, NGP gets in power or something like that. Would I want them to annex us and just bring us in as a North American super country or something like that? Like, personally, not, and I have my reasons, but I'll ask you first. Like,
my answer is simple to that. If they're doing it as an empire, and that we get like a lot of regional autonomy, and we'd be a satellite state of them or something, and that sounds better than being a satellite state of Washington, right? Mm-hmm. But if they want to do it and would like fully integrate us as a province or state or something and have lots of control over us, then no, I'd try and assert, hopefully, my own regional interests and my people's interests. Yeah, I think that answers that.
And then I think I agree with that on the most part, because I mean, even what we've seen here already, like since we started this show, talking to people from different regions within Canada, we even see all these different regional identities, and there's a strong argument to be made that, like, Canada as a whole, you can't really be. Again, this is where you kind of get tricky, because these are kind of uncharted waters, at least in my experience. But is Canada as a whole like a potential European ethnicity, or like something that will turn into an ethnicity down the line, or is it going to be these regional ethnicities, these Maritimers and Quebecois and Prairies, all these different locations? I think there's more evidence for the regional, the provincial identities to come about, because there is so much difference. I
have a slightly different response. Sure. I'd say it's layered. You'd have these regional identities, and we do, and there is an overarching federal identity.
Okay, yeah.
It's vague. It's the one that everyone always has a hard time defining. It's the one that all our writers and columnists and stuff are always agonizing about and can't seem to define. I do think it exists.
Okay, yeah. I wouldn't disagree there either. Like, I would say,
should we organize along it? Vaguely. I think to the same degree that it is vague, we should be allies and friends along that common bond. But regionally, we should be more autonomous.
So I think that's kind of dialing into it a little bit better. Is yes, there is sort of this distinct Canadianness that you could point to be further defined, and that maybe that definition doesn't come about by sitting there and observing it, but just engaging in the world and letting something come out. And we seem to have an understanding that there are regional identities subsumed underneath that. But that is to say, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say, I can get along with a guy like Joey on a more fraternal and easy basis than I can with the Americans, even though he's further away from me than most Americans.
There. So that's exactly what I'm pointing at, is you take all that into account, and this layered identity and this being so unique. Like, there's a lot of, like, it is unique, and it's not like Americans. And I think Americans find it really easy to say stuff like, "Oh, well, Canadians are just us. Like, let's just pull them under the umbrella of Americans, because what's the point of Canada?" And obviously, not really understanding that level of identity that Canadians do have and are producing as we go about engaging in the world. Because have you ever been to the States? Have you been around the States very much?
Yeah, just a little bit. I've visited a few times.
So I don't know about you, but in my experience, like I've been to North and South Carolina, New York, Pennsylvania, Nevada. Like I've been in a couple different places around the States, not comprehensive, but personally, I've never felt at home anywhere. And
Agreed.
the people there are very, like, you know what, like, contrary
nice.
to what a lot of people say, very nice, very, very welcoming.
Very fat.
You know what? Not really much fatter than Canadians, you know, honestly.
I don't know. Well, I haven't been there in a while, but when I went to Montana, man, there's some big lads out there.
You know, well, I mean, I don't know. I was at Walmart the other day. There's some big lads here too. But all that's to say is, even like a majority white place, like it's not home. It's not like they're my people, but they're not my people. Like I couldn't just jump into South Carolina and be like, oh yeah, this is just like, you know, Alberta, or this is just like Saskatchewan. Like it's way different. And they call, you know, you might call Alberta the south of Canada, like the Texas of Canada or whatever. Like, but you go to those southern states and they're clearly very different. There's a large demarcation between the two.
Yes.
So I think, you know, I don't know what you call it, American ignorance or what, but whenever they say that you can just, you know, subsume Canada underneath an American identity, an American nation, it's coming from a place that really lacks the understanding of what Canada is and what our, you know, both the national identity and the regional identities that make up the place. It misses all that, and so I think it doesn't do any good to make, you know, to be like, you know, just telling, like, because I see this, just telling Canadian nationalists to, like, you know, shut up and just be American and stop trying to be something different, because there is something different there, and like there is an essence to a Canadian and there is an essence to an American, and those things are very different. And I don't think it would work out very well. Again, like even in a based NJP empire or whatever. If you fail to take into account those differences, that would cause problems. Now, I don't think things are going to play out like that, because that's probably not very realistic. But regardless, that's how we have to understand the differences here. We have to understand Canada as something unique, and if we don't appreciate ourselves as that, then I think we don't have a very strong foundation for fixing things where we're at.
Yes. And we've historically done a terrible job of articulating and asserting our identity, although people say this so much as a cliche.
Right.
So we can make sure to quote tweet any American you see saying this kind of stuff, and show them your base Leaf side, and make sure they know Leaf gang's out here.
Yeah, just dunk on them, and the reality is we're the top tier ship posters out there. So.
Yeah, maybe Australia could give us a run for our money, but we're gonna beat them one day.
I think so. I mean, you know what? Like, we beat Australia in a lot of regards. Like, we're much better drinkers than they are.
Yeah.
I remember a story. We're better looking too. Yeah, I remember a story. A buddy went down to Australia, and are you familiar with an Indian shotgun?
Yes.
So they
wait, not like my grandpa's, right? You mean? Oh,
no,
you
not,
mean
not like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, buddy goes down there, and they're hanging out with some Australians on the beach, and he pulls out an Indian shotgun on the spot and downs his beer, and they'd never seen something like that before. They were mind blowing that you could, you know, you pull something like that off, you know, smash the beer can over your head and down it in one go, and they loved it. But the thing is, it was Canadians that came up with that, not Australians. So we haven't beat there.
Yeah, they got some work to do. You're right.
But yeah, step your game up, Australia.
We're going to be back in just a moment. We're going to go to part 2 of our discussion about Adrien Arcand's work, published by Antelope Hill. Serviam, and you should pick it up. And you too, Tyler. I was just talking to old Mr. Hamilton today, and he hadn't read it yet, which shocked me because he's Canadian Catholic.
I think it'd probably fit him very, very well. So hopefully he gets that. And
yeah, it's so in his wheelhouse, he'd need a flashlight to find it. You know what I mean? But that's
I know what you mean.
All right, we're going to be back.
So we hit a couple of different things last episode, but there's still a lot more to them. And I think what we want to jump into first of all is his political understandings, specifically his approach to fascism and corporatism. And obviously he brings in, like we said earlier in the past episode, he brings in his Catholic perspective very strongly here, because he sees fascism as a spiritual approach to the state that takes into account the soul of the human, as opposed to the soulless nature of liberal democratic governments. And so with this, he understands things as people serving a larger body, right? And this obviously comes in strongly in fascist theory in general. But every person a part of the state, every person a part of their nation, has to be working towards some common good based on what they are able to contribute.
And you can call that serving God if you're a religious man.
Yeah, and he does see it like that. He sees every person working together in this notion as serving something higher than themselves. And it's acting as a organism. It's a body. You have some people who might fill the brain of the body, and some people might fill the hand of the body, but that doesn't mean the brain is superior than the hand, because all of these parts are crucial for the whole to function. So this is where he approaches the notion of the state and organizing society. You got anything on that?
Nope, it's exactly that.
All right.
There's one particular section of the book where he lays out in turn fascism's view on all sorts of different aspects. And if you want to follow along with us, you'll find that on page 25 to 32.
Yeah.
The first one he says here, I'll skip past a bit. He says fascism and power. Fascism does not admit that power emanates in a fascist state from a section of the people or a majority of the electorate granted by a political party, since the state includes the entire population. It decrees that all power derives from God, that power is not a right but a duty that one can not claim in the name of some group or certain interests or even oneself, but only in the name of God and the truth. That strikes me as perfectly reasonable in every way. And I'll admit here, and for the topic, I'm not really Christian. I vaguely lean that way, and I'm probably what you just call a lapsed Christian. But I can still understand this perfectly. In my head, I do just a quick mental substitution. God for... I can just call it God anyway. It's not the point. The truth, big capital T truth, is something that's easy for me to recognize and want to serve. And I think it's a good principle that power derives from these things.
Yeah, and with that approach, and we touched upon this last week about his critiques of liberalism, is it recognizes the truth, it recognizes the good, and so it orients itself towards serving those things. In contrast to liberalism, which it gives equal weight to the good or the bad. You have the decision to do good, to do bad if you so choose. And this notion of state structure, of social organization, is that no, we should organize everything with the aim towards the good, and all moving parts of the body should be moving in unison. And obviously the fascism, the bundle of sticks, strong unity, they all move together in service of and towards that good. And every part can serve good equally, right? That's in opposition to the notion of every part must be equal. The idea that the hand should be equal to the brain, as opposed to knowing that both the hand and the brain can serve good in an equal amount. That I think that's the distinction being made here. And so
it's funny, even if your muscles didn't oppose against each other, you would have no strength.
Yeah, exactly. And what's being pointed at here is that you want your body to be healthy. You want all the parts of your body, all the people in your nation to be healthy, and you want them to do good. And so you need to have a system that helps orient people in that direction. And you don't like it. Basically, what in his corporatist model, he suggests that, and I think this is corporatism in general, but anytime you grant autonomy to a part of the body, you do so with the understanding that part will serve the common good. And if it doesn't serve the common good, if it ceases to do that, then the state acts as an intermediary to either change its course to make sure that it goes back to serving what is good, or it destroys that part and then reinstitutes something that is willing to serve the good. And so it prevents parts from acting against the whole, basically.
Yes. You know how I picture it? You know how whatever you want to argue, if you go into our parliament today, you have to argue how it's good for the gays and the Jews?
Yeah.
Just imagine that anyone who had to go in there had to argue something in terms of how it was good for the people in the body and how it served God or the truth.
Right. Yeah.
So it wouldn't take everything off the table even. Like maybe you could say, oh, we should have free trade or something. Right. But you'd have to explain to us how that's good for us and God.
Yeah, and then the counter arguments that would come out would be like not notions of why that person is bad for suggesting, oh, free trade is good or whatever they're suggesting. The arguments would be, why might this potentially be bad for the people or for the body? And so if all the arguments were framed within that context, then you see much more beneficial approaches to governing things.
It's so dang simple, it almost makes your heart bleed that it's just not how the world works.
Oh, that's the thing. It does seem so intuitive, and I think part of the problem is people have these hang-ups, especially like conservatives, for example, and individualists have this hang-up of it being too collectivist, destroying the uniqueness of the individual, or I won't be able to live whatever life I want to live. But I'm drawing a quote from the Doctrine of Fascism. Far from crushing the individual, the fascist state multiplies his energies. Just as in a regiment, a soldier is not diminished but multiplied by the number of his fellow soldiers. So, with this principle of fascism, this strength from unity, when you collectivize, you don't destroy the individual and mush him down into some unindividuated a mess of nothingness. No, you strengthen who that person is.
Right.
You again, you're weak as a single soldier. And it doesn't matter how strong of an individual you are. You're strong as a soldier, as a part of a regiment, and your value is in what you contribute to that regiment. And for I guess more modern listeners, a good example is sports. You can be the best player on your team, but unless your support staff and the players around you can help elevate you, then that individualness doesn't really mean much, because it just gets crushed against an opponent who is more unified.
Sure.
So it's never about crushing the individual in some totalitarian, and again, this is the modern notion of totalitarian, but totalitarian mess of just cutting down the top, but actually making use of you for what you are worth and recognizing the value in each individual and what they can contribute to the whole.
Right.
And doing that, society is much healthier and individuals are much healthier. So this is what I like in all of this.
Yeah. And I think a good place to go from there would be his view on property rights.
Sure.
He says, in the fascist state, property rights are sacred. Since it is recognized as a right, however, it involves certain duties. Socialism preaches that property is theft, and liberalism proclaims that all individuals are entitled only to what they individually possess. Fascism, in turn, proclaims that private property is a deposit that the individual can possess and transfer to his inheritors without immoderate taxation on capital, given that he makes reasonable use of his privilege and that he develops to his maximum capacity for the common interest alongside his own benefit, the part of the national soil or capital or industry that is left in his hands. So I think one obvious example we could take in our modern world would be you have foreign ownership of land?
Mm-hmm.
No, because you're not cultivating it, you're not using it. It's, in order to properly possess something, you have to nurture it and take care of it and steward it and use it to the common good. And you can reap the benefits of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable approach to property rights. And I think people get caught up in again, this goes back to like really capitalistic minded or conservative minded individualists who fret about property rights under fascism. But again, you should only be worried about this if you have an intention to use your property or whatever you gain from it to undermine wider society. If you decide your private interests, which are generally speaking, in these cases, your private interests are more important to you for whatever hedonistic pursuits, because this is generally what people who fear this kind of approach to property rights, this is what their interests are hedonistic and greed. If you aren't one of those people, though, if you have an interest in producing good and doing good for people and not undermining the rest of society, then why would you have anything to fear? I think there's lots of space given by this system for people to work based on what they can contribute and achieve the most they can and cultivate the most they can, not only for themselves but for others. There's plenty of space for them to do that without having them completely have their individuality crushed underneath some mass collective. As long as you're working and you are not undermining others, you're not undermining the wider whole, then you're basically given free reign to build and cultivate for yourself whatever you need. So I don't really see an issue with this approach.
Well, listen, is there any society on Earth that lets you use your property to run like a murder factory or something? Like, I don't think there's one ideology or government or anything on the planet that maybe some extreme libertarian states, like maybe in like a cartel area of Mexico, you could run a murder factory.
Exactly, cartel area. But again, it's like
no civilized place.
Yeah.
Like, and so we just expand that principle out to you can't like maybe run a newspaper that's going to be shitting on the people it's supposed to be informing all the time.
Mm-hmm. Or running a medical clinic that chops people's genitals off because
or taking a 100 sections of land and planting something on it that's going to be poisonous to the soil.
Or destroying a bunch of
local flora and fauna.
Yeah, exactly. Or land developing for the purpose of these massive apartments to just jam as many people as you can in a small space.
I was talking with Eld this week about fasci environmentalism.
Okay, yeah,
and
yeah.
you know how environmentalism is. It originated as a fascist doctrine, really.
Right.
I think that's the stewardship we're talking about here. It's the idea that we have to tend to our God-given land and what's around us and each other in what we're doing. I think anything that allows, say, and it's never even equally applied. Like, I can't break some little local environmental law and I'll get slapped with a huge fine, and then some big company can. It's a big mess right now. But I don't think any country that would allow such a thing would. I think it would have given over its right to rule. It's failed to provide stewardship to the land and the people.
Yeah, I think all the environmentalism of today really misses that notion of stewardship, because it doesn't come at it with a spiritualistic understanding of it, right? Like it comes at it with a purely materialistic, like it's just, protecting the environment is just a means to an end, which is either, we need to save, the planet just because it's the planet, or we need to save humanity from being wiped out because it's not good if humanity dies, and that's it. Or
they're all perfectly happy to cut down your local woodland if it provides more low-income housing. Well,
yeah, exactly. So whenever it's not serving some higher good, and this is something like a transcendent higher good, then it's ultimately toothless. Like, it doesn't really manifest in any serious change. In the case of the environmental, any real stewardship does not manifest when it's not serving something that is transcendent.
Let's move it on from there to a natural place to follow, which is fascism and capital. This will be for our real economic listeners. I know most of our friends don't seem to get into this or don't think of things this way, but if you're involved in industry or management or planning, then you definitely do. Fascism draws a clear distinction between capital and capitalism. Capital is an indispensable economic element for the vitality of a nation. Capitalism is an economic and social tyranny exercised by certain owners of capital. Read the rest yourself, but there you have it. Of course, to do a great project, you might need a factory or a lumber yard or any other kind of thing, or even just a nice hockey arena. You're going to have to pool your resources. That's capital. Capital is good. Capital is going to come from somewhere. It'll either come from private investment or from the state. Regardless, it is not capitalism just because it has capital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like it's you just use your capital towards the ends of the interests of your people. It's simple enough. Don't use it for detrimental activities that destroy your people. And I think he ends us off by saying, like, speculation provides no real value. So what's the point? And if you can't use it to provide value or good for the people, then that's destructive, and the state has to intervene to prevent that from happening.
Simple. Fascism and political parties. Fascism demands the abolition of all political parties. In reality, there is no such thing as a fascist party, except during times when the democratic era still lingers, since fascism is a governmental system and not a partisan grouping. I know at another part in the book he talks about how the party system makes this false distinction between the state and the parties, and it creates this division that's completely, contradictory and unnecessary.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point to make on all that, because when I think about, like, for example, the modern Canadian political parties, it is a kind of a weird thing almost, where you don't feel like any of these parties really represent the country. I mean, to the extent that they do, it's just just in the meantime, basically, just during this time, this is the party that represents it. But even that, it just you still have all these other parties floating around, trying to edge in their notion to represent the country and to push interests. And at the end of the day, why would you want that? Why would you want to have these sort of these political groups, pushing each other around, and really not even for votes, but for lobby money and for political donors? Like, that's what they're really after. Why would you want that representing you? Like, how do you connect to a political party? Like, at this point, I don't know how I ever at any point in my life would ever have connected to one political party to represent Canada. Like, why would it just seems so like insane. Like, why would you not want to have your entire system governed by one apparatus? And and I don't mean just like, okay, you only have one institution, but I mean, why would you have anything outside of that, like other groups trying to push in to gain political representation? Like,
Right.
Why would you not just want to have that one thing running?
The personal representation comes from the rest of corporatism. If you
Right.
are an oil baron, then you'll be in the oil guild, and you'll be able to negotiate with with maybe like the refineries or something, and you can hash it out and have your representation. And I'm sure there's a lot of there. I'm sure in Italy and all that, there was all sorts of very heated, very political debates between these different guilds, but they were all under the same telos that we talked about before.
Right.
How do we organize this in such a way as is good and fair?
And there's a good quote on that later on one of the essays written about Arcand, and it says, he was a vigorous defender of corporatism and of fascistic corporatism. That is to say, a conception of the corporation wishing that it would become material constituted by individuals and private moral persons, but that it formally ends in the administrative instances of the state. That is the sole adequate method to fulfill the role as mediator between the private and public for the corporation. So it basically, what it's doing there is it's the body that makes sure that each of these different administrations and guilds all are working together and properly interacting between each other to work so that that body, that corpus, is in the right direction, right? And going back to what we were saying before. And how can you do that with a bunch of random different political parties, like always fighting each other?
Well, what happens is that someone with external interests comes and loots it all. That's always the result every single time. That's why we've never seen a drop of our oil profits in Alberta. Yeah,
exactly. Like, imagine if the only conflict was just that was happening was just how to best use this oil for our own interests. Imagine if that was the only conflict, and the state served to mediate the different bodies in a way that best utilized that oil. But no, we can't have that.
No. The other thing it takes care of within that is the management and labor divide.
Right.
Labor represented by unions, fighting management represented by political lobbyists and other such things, has been the cause of, well, it caused, in some sense, Marxism, right? Or is it a result of it? Regardless, it propagated it, this false division. Mm-hmm. Truly, both need each other. You don't have anywhere to work without capital to build a work site, buy tools, pay your wage. You need labor. That's why strikes work. These can't be mediated between the two for all sorts of reasons in our current system. I think that the state has to be the overruling body, and that good labor relations come top down, like all things do, from the state. So workers' rights and all that shouldn't come from your employer. They should come from the state. Or the guilds, at least.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole antithesis. I might not even call it an antithesis. It's just a step beyond. But the idea that, again, in Marxism, that you're supposed to be in conflict, that the worker is supposed to be in conflict with the employer, with the bourgeoisie, and that somehow this class of workers has more in common with other workers across the entire globe than they do with their own people within their own state. That's just insane. When you really think about that, why would you approach your understanding of class relations and society-wide relations from that perspective, that you have again, because they're materialists, there isn't really a spiritual connection between all workers. So there's only a class connection between all workers around the world, and somehow that's supposed to manifest in something functional, and somehow you can own the means of production all together. Like, we all know how human organization actually works. So someone actually ends up in charge, or a group of people within that collective of workers will still have to run something like that.
Right.
You still have to run it. So the idea
You got to show up at 9 a.m. or at least at a chosen time. If everyone's late, it just doesn't work either. There's got to be times you work, or you're not really a worker.
So the idea that that is preferable, like somehow that Marxist conflict theory approach to things is preferable to something that allows you to unite the employer and the worker within your own nation, based on your common roots and your common bonds. Somehow, I don't know, you have to be complete. You have to be so worked up in your brain mazes, your brain compartments, to think that would be preferable than just finding a way to unify the people under one banner where they can work together as a common body to a common good. And I don't know. It just blows my mind that we've spent so many years, so many decades wrapped up in that approach to critiquing capital, and critiquing worker relations, that we never bothered to find like the simple solution. Just, hey, we have common roots, we have a common nation, we can work together for our ends if we just clean up the relations between and stop the conflict, stop exploiting each other.
Even a cursory examination of Marxism reveals these contradictions. Like, I had that figured out when I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Even conservatives figure that out, and they can see that it's just bare resentment, or as Arcand would put it, Talmudry.
Yep.
Let's move on to let's start wrapping up this section.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe cut right to, well, no, I think the best place to end it is fascism and liberty, which we talked about some last episode. Let's put a real fine point on it. Fascism has very precise thoughts on liberty. These thoughts are, in short, the exact opposite of the interpretation of liberty brought forth by the French Revolution. Liberty does not exist by itself, since it is simply the consequence of the enjoyment of a right. One is free to use or not use a right, but liberty does not engender any rights. Socialists and liberals make liberty a foremost principle precisely to place at the same level as a citizen the nations of a country who are totally foreign to this country and do not enjoy any rights. Almost prescient.
Yeah, he was dialing right into that.
If only he knew how far that would go, that non-citizens would end up with more rights than citizens.
Yeah, that like the idea that your rights come from, I don't know, being free to choose what you desire at any given time, and I mean the ultimate result is to be liberated from your corporeal body. Like, again, how is that any way to function society? Because ultimately what it's done is it's pushed this consumerism in liberal society, where you consume identities and you feel like you're free to choose whatever identity you so desire, and it just becomes this consumptive practice. And obviously it serves capitalism at the end of the day, because if you untie yourself from your racial and your cultural, your familial, all these differences that are inherent to our identities, if you're able to use the logic provided to you by that sort of libertarian or liberal notion of identity, then you could become a soulless mass as part of the this homogenized human, and that makes you very easy to exploit, and you become the pure consumer. And so we see with all that push towards equality, no matter what, equality despite our differences, we basically see humanity turn into a formless mass. And I think this has been touched upon a lot. And this is in stark contrast to the fascist approach that recognizes the difference and sees it as valuable, as The people are worth what they are based on what they are different in, and you are there's something noble about being your own unique contributor to society. About you are a certain race and nation and culture, and you are either a male or a female, and there's actually value in that, and you should embrace that identity and embrace that role, because in the fascist approach or in the corporatist approach, they're looking for people to fill the roles that they are best suited for in society. And so it's like, I think in one of the essays at the end, the author brings up Aristotle, and like, you should be giving flutes to the flutists. If someone who is not a flutist, someone who's not a musician, is comes into possession of a flute, well, that person should not be trying to become a flutist. They should be bringing that flute to someone that is suited for that role. And in doing so, we all work with each other to make sure that we're in the proper positions for what our natural differences lead us to be, as opposed to this liberal notion of choosing whatever fate you so desire and ultimately becoming lost in the mess of isolation and alienation.
Yes. Like, okay, Charles and I, we have the liberty. We could do this podcast differently. Charles could run all the technical aspects, and I could give the big brain speeches. But then it would be even worse than it already is. Think about it.
Very relevant example there. Yeah. No, if I was running the technical side of things, there'd be a podcast, but it would not be so incredible.
You'd be listening to it on rock headphones like Fred Flintstone.
Hey, that wouldn't be too terrible.
That actually sounds awesome. But my big brain speeches, you wouldn't want to listen anyway. They'd devolve into ums and ahs and probably just tractor metaphors. So we're better off this way.
Well, tractor metaphors, that's pretty cool, honestly.
I still get to interject them. Everything's working as it should.
Yeah, it's fitting according to the proper role in the corporeal body of podcasting or whatever.
I understand.
Okay.
You didn't understand. Yes. All right. Let's take a 10-second pause.
Sure.
For a word from our sponsors. We don't have any yet because Dissident Apparel obviously didn't like my toque joke.
One day.
When we come back, which is now for you, we'll talk about to serve and how to serve.
So I think the next part that we wanted to talk about is Serviam, the title of the book, and Serviam in contrast to non-Serviam. And Serviam means to serve, and this obviously contrasted against to not serve. And this is a big foundation in his approach to things. And obviously this is a Catholic interpretation or understanding of things, because you have to serve God. That's ultimately the whole point. Like, we don't live to serve ourselves in that literal sense, in that satanic sense. We live to serve God as something beyond ourselves. So this is intertwined within all of his political philosophy and basically his whole approach to life, really. What are your thoughts on Serviam, just in general, in that concept?
Well, I'm reminded. Oh, I said that last week, but that C.S. Lewis quote always comes to mind, where you're always serving something, whether you mean to or not. And if you don't know what it is, it'll probably end up being a gangster or a prostitute.
Yeah.
I see you simping out there.
Yeah, don't simp. But I think that's the fundamental point in all of this, is that no matter what you do, you will always end up serving something. And you can't just be a individualistic atheist who is freed from the ties of all things. You will serve something. And I guess in contrast to non-Serviam, it is those who refuse to serve God that end up serving Satan, because at the end of the day, that's the point that he's making there, is that your desire to free yourself from any notion of a higher authority to be beholden to, that is causing you to serve evil or to work against the good, and you work against yourself, really, because in what world do you live in where you don't serve something, where you like there's always some sort of pleasure or desire that will consume you if you let it, and you need something beyond yourself to help reorient to what is good for you.
Was it Saint Anthony who said that like evil is just an absence of good?
I'm not sure if that was. I mean, that's a quote. I know that is a very common quote around that topic. So,
but if we're going on that basis, let's just go with that.
Oh yeah,
as an assumption. Then, if you're not serving good, then yes, you will be serving not good, and which is evil. You don't really have a choice in the matter. It's like light on or light off.
Yeah,
you can be. I guess you can be more or less good, but you got. But in order to directly serve Satan, you would only just need to not serve God.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
And that's what he's touching on, is the idea that I will not serve. And he says this is the Jewish approach to things too. That the Jews as a race of people, or I'm not even sure if he can necessarily considers Jews a race.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He talks about that.
Oh, okay, right. But it's a Jewish tendency, towards the serpent that he says, and we have the duty to take good into our homes and into our nations, and make sure that is what prospers, and that's what we tend to, as opposed to refusing all that or leaving the decision. Again, this goes back to the notion of liberal choice, but leaving the decision up to the individual, not demanding people serve anything, saying go figure it out on your own, basically. And what that ultimately results in is most people falling into temptation and being led astray into doing evil or avoiding good, and whether explicitly or implicitly saying that I will not serve. And he wants to see a strong reclamation of the notion of serviam, of the need to serve, so that people don't fall back into this trap of temptation that pulls them away and brings them into degeneracy and decay. And ultimately, your whole society should be based around this. You should be wife serving husband, and husband serving the nation, and the nation serving God. He even says the leader of the nation is still subject to service to the higher authority, the divine authority. And so if you do not appreciate that in your approach to the social body, then there is no way to ensure that good happens in your society.
Would you say it's easy to do good? Like, this is a genuine question. Like, because babies they're innocent, I guess, but you could call them good, I think. But it's not. I don't know. I'm genuinely asking: is it easy to do good?
I think I think in that topic, the reality is that it is difficult to do good, because if it was so easy to do good, if you just left things up to people's own choices, like liberalism does, just say figure it out on your own and make the best choices for yourself, then we would see a lot more good in these liberal democracies. But we don't. We see people making terrible choices. We see people taking advantage of people's inability to make good choices, and it seems to completely draw people away from the good.
That said, if we had a nation working towards God,
yeah,
like maybe like even more like say the one our grandparents grew up in, then it would probably be a lot easier to do good on your own level. You just have to worry about your own. You wouldn't have to have a podcast explaining fascism, for instance.
Well, I think that's where the difficulty comes in, is that it's not something you can just do on your own. You actually need a societal support mechanism to ensure that you do serve the good. Because most people don't figure that out on their own. They need guidance. And
so So it's not easy. It's not easy to do good, but it would sure as hell be a lot easier if we're kind of all pulling in the same direction on that.
Well, I think so. I think the trick and the difficulty really is that you need a mass social organism all working with each other to ensure that they all stay accountable to the good. You need these institutions on board, right? Like these massive organizational bodies need to be involved in that. The church and intermediary institutions from the state all need to be on board with all of that. So if that's in place, then I think it's a lot easier. But getting that all in place is very difficult. I think that's one of the things that shows us why this is not something that is so simple, because all the work that goes into building up these institutions and these societal structures just demonstrates how hard it is to get on board with the good. Because again, it's not something I think the average person just gets to on their own.
Let's bring it to the practical.
Sure.
You have an organization. You have a little man or bun to say even. That's where we're at right now, I think. That's our level of organization is fascist in this country now, is little clubs. How do you serve your club? Would you serve your club then, or would you serve something higher still, or what?
Well, I think when we break this down in the idea of in serving, you obviously need to start with a willingness to serve the guys that you're organized with on that base level. So that just means it could mean just showing up, right? At this stage, you might only have, okay, we're going to go train or whatever. So just show up to training. And that might be the first step. Can you get yourself out of bed to show up to something? Or it might be a little bit beyond that and you have some tasks, so maybe you have some skills. Can you apply your skills to some goal that your group wants to work towards? So it might be that.
Maybe you just have some extra cash sitting around and you help pay I don't know, clubhouse fees or whatever.
Yeah. So it's very simple things at first, but it all has to be done under this understanding that you are working towards something greater. And it also can't be done in a way that has a lot of resentment. Because we touched on this last episode, right? Like you have a bad football coach or something, and you don't like the calls that they're making, or you're whatever, you're losing a little bit, so you're not happy with that. But you still have to follow the plays because that's the most successful way to win a football game. Whether or not they're good plays or not, you still have to follow them. And so within your social structure, you have to take it upon yourself to be willing to go along with, whatever
the game plan,
whatever is needed at the time, so that you can serve that, larger interests of your group. Because if you're always resentful about bad decisions or whatever the case is, if you don't know how to serve, then you're as good as useless, even if you don't like the way things are going.
You might find if you're having a very bad time in one of these places that you're the flautist, you're the guy with a flute who's not a flautist, and you're trying to do something you're not so cut out for. Especially if you're a young guy, you might not know what you're good at yet. So it's really good to try a lot of different stuff. But say you end up in a lot of intellectual discussions and you keep getting skunked or coming out embarrassed or wrong. I don't know. Maybe you're the guy who brings protein shakes to the thing instead. Who knows? There's all kinds of ways to serve for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's part of it too, is making sure that you know your role and you don't step out of line. Because you see that on sports teams a lot, right? You see these guys that really want to be hot shots on the team or whatever. They want to be the playmaker. They want to be the goal scorer, and it's just not their role. And they you mess things up for everyone else, right? When you're the guy that should be setting up the passes, and you're trying to be the guy scoring the goals, you're not really helping anyone. And maybe it takes some time for you to figure out, what your place is, just like NP was saying. But that shouldn't cause you to feel discouraged. But on the other hand, the rest of the group should also, in that sort of, we might say that corporatist understanding, within their roles, maybe find places and find what's good for that person who feels like they're out of place. What are you good at? And your role might come out of being some sort of intermediary between two different roles within that group, for example. That's just one way to approach it.
And if you're a young enough guy, you're not good at anything. So a good metric to follow is what you're really interested in. You're far more likely to get good at something you're very interested in and draws you. So it's the group's job to help promote your interests and get you the training or whatever that you would need to pursue that. If you're an old bastard, 35 or something, you should have enough life experience, hopefully, by then to kind of know what you are. I'm a technician. That's all I am. And I'm proud to be it. I wouldn't want to be more. It gives me an engineering kind of outlook on life, and it was useful. So I like to muddy my fingers in the philosophizing and stuff, but at the end of the day, I back off every single time because I'm just asking questions, having fun that way. My job's to keep the electricity flowing.
Well, there you go. That's a perfect example of a way to approach your role in things. Take the advice from NP. Yeah, figure out that position and then agree and amplify it, basically. And what the people around you should be doing too is also making sure that you're exalted in that position and being appreciated for what you do. So all of these parts matter in working towards a functioning whole. And I think you should always keep that in mind as you're going through your organizational progress. All right, well, that's all we got for the show today. I think we started off with that discussion on kind of disengaging from all the propaganda and the constant stream of media. We just need to not get too wrapped up in stuff, especially stuff that isn't too relevant to our situation, right? We focus on what is relevant and discard stuff that subsumes your being. And then we had that good discussion with Laser, hey?
Yes, I like that guy a lot. I'm gonna go for a beer with him right now, actually.
Oh, beauty! What a sweet dude. All right, well, and then we hit on the misunderstandings of the applicability of annexing Canada and what it means to be Canadian in that context, America annexing Canada. And then we had our part 2 on Arcand and all of that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Remember to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell so you get updated. Do the whole deal so that we maintain our unreal view counts. Oh, and get go to antelopehill.com and purchase a copy of our the Serviam by Adrien Arcand. Support the publisher that way as well.
And ground yourself in true Canadian fascism, our history, our culture, and where we're coming from.
Absolutely.
Before you go, Charles, I had a funny sparring match this week.
Oh, yeah?
I just got my ass handed to me in the ring. And there was I went 3 rounds in 3 minutes. And there was a point in there where I was just like, let me out, Mom, let me out. I'm getting pummeled. And I was just like, please, I don't want to be here anymore. And I kind of glance over at the clock and there's 2 minutes left in the round. I'm just like, oh.
Oh, man.
Have you ever been there?
You know what? I haven't been there really. Though I do have a funny story. Okay, the one time I was there was my first actual boxing match where it was just a slug. I was just going non-stop. But the other guy was gassed out too, so it was just a battle of who could grind it out more. So I kind of had that. I just wanted it to end, but I wasn't getting beaten down, I guess, in your case. Was the guy you were going against, was he that much better than you, or what was the deal?
He was technically better. He's actually just a little guy. I got gassed.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't doing, and it wasn't full contact sparring either.
Right.
I'm sure it would have been a different story. I don't know what would have happened, but regardless, I kept getting tagged, right?
Yeah, see, I had I guess I had the almost, not quite the opposite, but I had a funny sparring match this week too. My coach, he tells me, oh, I got this really big guy, heavy hitter, big boy, 260 pounds, but he's just scared to pull the trigger, so I need someone who's aggressive to go and push the pace on him. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll spar him. I'll help him get into it. And I guess this guy had been
260. That's a big boy.
Yeah, so I guess he had been training with my coach for about 2 years and never done an actual fight. Only sparred, a couple times. So I figured, okay, this will be no big deal. If he's scared to pull the trigger and he's that heavy, well, I'm assuming I'm going against this big chunky guy, big fat guy. And I get there, dude is just a mountain, like 6'5" or something like that. 260 pounds, but jacked. I think he was like an ex-football player, and a CFL guy. And I'm like, this is the guy that's scared to pull the trigger. Like, dude, full beard, just like I said, jacked.
It's like in the cartoon when the elephant's afraid of the mouse, eh?
Yeah, and then it comes to it, and like he's flinching away from me. He is not wanting to get into it too much. But the only issue is when we went to full sparring. Oh man, that guy, like, you're 260 pounds, you're cracking people hard. Like, I'm only 5'10", 180. So, like, he just wanted to keep me away with that big long reach, and man, I just kept getting in the head over and over again. And the only penance was when the coach made us stay in tight, and then I was able to just go to town on him and gas him out. But yeah, it was it made me feel kind of good at some points that big guy was flinching away with me. So I had that this week.
I think I just got to go in and take some more beatings. Just until then, it doesn't bother me.
It feels good to get punched once you get hit long enough. So just do it.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll be here to beat you over the head soon. We'll talk to you all later.
Yep. See you around, boys.